So Made in Abyss has some very tragic character stories. Arumui, Faputa, some of these characters have the most grimacing, tragic stories you have ever seen in anime. And one of these characters that has a despairing story is Belaf. This guy went from someone with a strategical, intelligent mind to just someone who is utterly broken by the situation that played out around him. But before we get into that, if you do enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for similar Made in Abyss content in the future. Without further ado, let us get straight into it. So the first time we're introduced to Belaf is actually on the ship, and this is where Vuako has some uncertainty about her ability as one of the three sages, and Belaf is offering, some insight and encouragement from his perspective to help her justify that yes, she is a part of the three sages and she deserves to be in that position. So straight off the bat, we already see Belaf as this good-hearted character, a character with good intentions, and this plays into later. After this, we see scenes of Belaf on the way to the island in sort of this Robin secondary leader role to Wazukan's leader role. And this is more exemplary when they actually reach the island and they start interacting with these natives, and he is essentially the translator. He is the one that allows the tribe leader, the chief, to connect with Wazukan and the Ganja crew. And this is where they learn about the Abyss. Now, of course, after the first episode, we skip a few episodes until we see the past and the history of this Ganja crew. And this is where we see even more scenes of Belaf in sort of this secondary leader role. He's giving commands to all these people. He's the one who tells Wazukan about all of these water sources, which ones are viable, which ones are not viable, and ultimately decides to go for this water source, which all of us are aware caused the undoing of this Ganja crew. Now, after this point, Belaf kind of goes into the background a little bit. We see him interacting with some people from the Ganja crew, trying to do his best when all of the terrible things break out. We see how he observes when Vuako and Arumui have this mother and daughter moment that was just so beautiful. He observes this and takes a mental note of it, and it honestly affects his psyche in the future. But after this, he kind of goes into the background a little bit as Arumui, Vuako, and Wazukan's whole thing plays out. And once all this plays out and the whole crew is saved by Arumui's children, this is when we see Belaf utterly break. Right? He just breaks. Of everything that we were shown of Belaf, he is this moral person. He is intelligent. He is strategically minded. But at the end of the day, he is a moral person who would do nothing in his power to hurt a child. And once he finds out that he is consuming this child's children and putting her through a cycle of constant despair, he goes into this state of just utter impairment. He's broken mentally. The guy wants to die. He wants to die. The only one keeping him alive is Wazukan force feeding him to help Wazukan achieve his own goal because he knows Belaf is needed for that. And in fact, he is so broken that when Arumui actually starts to move, when she gets abused by Wazukan enough to cause this emotional outburst that causes her to move, and all of the villagers follow her to this area, Belaf is actually the one who says, you know what, I'm done with my life. I am done with my life because everything that I have experienced, Arumui, Vuako, everyone that I cared about go through, a large percentage of the crew dying. These are things that affected him gravely. And he said, you know what, I'm done. All right, Arumui, take my body, take me and do whatever you want with it because I need to atone for the sins that we have committed against you. And that is exactly what he does. He gives his body to Arumui and she consumes him and transforms him into this big monster. But he wasn't initially as big as he is in the present time in Made in Abyss. The reason why he grew so large is because he sucked all of this blood, all of this energy from Mitty, from this copy of Mitty that Bontrud brought down into the 6th layer. And speaking of Belaf in the present, there was some scenes between Rico and Belaf